Before Michael Myers, before Freddy, before Jason or Ghostface, we had the OGs of horror. I'm talking all about Frankenstein, Dracula, The Mummy, and so many others. Back when Universal owned the horror genre and its monsters ruled the cinematic universe. But like they say, all good things must come to an end. Or do they?
While Hollywood eventually moved on from the monster classics, Universal kept them at heart, every so often trying to reinvent them, but nothing really stuck. And for a while, monsters were reduced to nothing but nostalgia. Halloween masks, an occasional theme park photo op, you get the picture. They were basically slowly losing their appeal to newer generations and fading past their prime.
That's all until now, because there's a new era afoot, and it's one where Universal monsters are making the biggest comeback in over a century, and we're living in it, baby. Today, we're diving deep into Universal's secret weapon and its master plan to bring the monsters back bigger, better, and more terrifying than ever, and what this means for the future of the monsters' legacy. Let's break it all down.
Now, if we want to understand why this comeback is such a big deal, we're going to have to travel back in time, jump in that time machine way back to when Universal Pictures first created horror as we know it. It all started in the 1920s when Universal dropped The Hunchback of Notre Dame and The Phantom of the Opera, which shocked audiences with their insane makeup work. Then in 1931, Universal changed horror forever with Bela Lugosi's Dracula, who was both terrifying and charming, kind of like me.
Anyways.
It's alive! It's alive!
That same year, Boris Karloff brought Frankenstein's monster to life, which pretty much cemented Universal's impact on horror cinema. And then, one by one, Universal rolled out The Mummy, The Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and all the other classics, each one shaping the whole genre.
Now, there are two big reasons why Universal monsters took off the way they did. Number one, because they were all about what it means to be human. These films tapped into human anxieties and desires and portrayed these monsters as outsiders, really resonating with the audience on a deeper level.
And number two, these movies were visual spectacles way beyond their time. They had groundbreaking performances and special effects that just stuck with the audience. I mean, think about every time you see a big cape or a full moon, you automatically either think of Dracula or the Wolfman. Basically, for a while, these monsters ruled the cinematic world, but like we mentioned, nothing lasts forever.
By the 1950s, horror was evolving. Audiences became obsessed with atomic age monsters like Godzilla, which reflected Cold War fears at the time. Then as decades passed, horror shifted again, and you had the rise of slasher villains in the 70s and 80s, followed by psychological horror, which pushed Universal's classic monsters deeper into the background. But that didn't mean that they disappeared completely, because over the years, there were a lot of reimaginings and tributes. But through all of that, Universal didn't land another major hit with its monsters for decades.
Let's get out of here! Whoa!
Then that all changed in 1999 when Universal reimagined The Mummy. Now, this was a modern take on its 1932 classic, and while it had horror elements in it, instead of going full horror, Universal leaned into a mix of genres, kind of creating an Indiana Jones-style blockbuster. And it worked. The movie was a massive success, introducing a whole new generation to the Universal monsters, even if it wasn't quite the horror revival that fans might have been expecting. But for the first time in decades, it felt like the monsters had a real shot at making a comeback.
Now, fast forward a few years, and with new technology and CGI at their disposal, Universal doubled down on bringing their monsters back through several standalone films. We got movies like Van Helsing in 2004, The Wolfman in 2010, and Dracula Untold in 2014. But standalone films were not enough. Universal was hungry for more.
Enter the Marvel problem. At this time, the Marvel Cinematic Universe was making it rain with those big bucks, and every studio wanted a piece of that pie. So in 2014, Universal announced that they were going all in on a Monsters reboot, and they called it, can you guess it? I'll give you a second, the Dark Universe.
The idea was to take Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Invisible Man, and turn them to a massive action-packed cinematic universe that would rival the MCU. And in 2017, they dropped a big photo promoting the project with some A-list actors on it.
Some huge actors. I mean, we had people like Tom Cruise, Sofia Boutella, we also had Russell Crowe, Johnny Depp, as well as a few others. But there was one big problem. Universal got so caught up in making this such a huge success that they forgot to make a good movie first. And they kicked off this whole thing in 2017 with The Mummy, starring Tom Cruise and Sofia Boutella. And the results were pretty horrendous.
Didn't work out.
Less to say, this whole cinematic universe was scrapped and the dark universe was dead before it began.
See, the reason why people loved Universal Classic Monsters so much is because of the character-driven storylines and human connections, not to mention the horror gothic elements that made these movies so legendary.
Right, so the movies that were being pumped out starting in 2017, it just didn't have that same connection that the ones in the 1930s did. So Universal went back to the drawing board, and instead of forcing a superhero-style universe, they took a different approach, one that would bring back the monsters the right way, which we will get into in just a second.
Now, while Universal was trying to find ways to revive the monsters on screen, they were already making a huge comeback off screen. Can you guess how? Take a second. Really think about it. What do you think I'm talking about? I'm talking about Halloween Horror Nights, baby. Cheers to that.
It was at Universal's premiere Halloween event where the classic Universal monsters were reimagined and reintroduced to a whole new generation of fans. In 2018, HHN Hollywood introduced a brand new haunted maze called Universal Monsters. And this wasn't your grandpa's Dracula anymore. These were monsters that were darker and more terrifying than ever before.
The facade alone set the tone for what this comeback would look like. It was a massive graveyard arc with Universal monsters carved into stone right at the entrance, which was a perfect symbol for the monsters making a modern day comeback. And the best part is HHN collabed with the badass musician Slash to compose the original score for this maze, giving it the biggest promotion yet.
This is exciting because as far as I can think of, no one has ever done a Halloween haunt where you see all the Universal monsters.
Literally all of them. We're putting all of them into the maze. So
Hooey! It is cold tonight, boys! But we're gonna get through this video. Now, the Monsters Maze over at Hollywood in 2018 was such a success that Universal took notice of two things. One, these legends still had potential, and two, they needed to go bi-coastal, baby. So Orlando got its Monsters House in 2019, which was then followed by Universal Monsters Houses in 2021, 2022, 2023, as well as last year in 2024.
While Universal is trying to find ways to bring the monsters back on the big screen, HHN proved that there was a massive hunger for them. And after the collapse of the dark cinematic universe, they had to find a whole new approach. Enter Invisible Man 2020.
Now, The Invisible Man in 2020 took a completely different approach, and it was successful. Instead of it being this superhero-style monsters movie, it was a psychological thriller that really connected with the audiences in a terrifying way, and it proved right for Universal. So much so that with a $7 million budget, this movie holds in $145 million worldwide.
And just like that, Universal found the answer that they've been looking for all along. It's not about this superhero stuff. It's about making the audiences feel connected and going back to its 1930s roots. Now, I will say not every standalone film is successful. Blumhouse, Wolfman this year. But look at the potential that they do have. For example, Nosferatu is technically not classified as a Universal classic monster, but look at what they could do when they open the doors to let individual creators just introduce these monsters to a brand new audience. And as you already know, the dark universe concept never really went away.
Because for the first time ever, Universal Monsters are getting their own dedicated land in a theme park with Epic Universe, opening on May 22nd.
Dark Universe is the first fully themed horror land of its kind.
Wow.
Never before
It's
seen. Exactly. Where it's living, it's breathing, and all of the classic Universal monsters are going to be making a comeback and be reintroduced to a whole
new generation of fans.
Exactly.
And they're going to be roaming around,
That's
baby.
right.
They will
We're
be
gonna be-
IRL.
100%. We're going to be able to roam through the dark villages. We're going to come face to face with the Wolfman and other classic monsters there. We're even going to be able to ride what Universal's classifying as
The scariest ride that they have ever created.
with never before seen technology, animatronics, the whole shebang, and a new continuation of the Frankenstein legacy story within the ride itself. This is basically
Sign me up.
a whole new door opening
for the classic monsters in
and
a
new
whole
generation of people.
Essentially, Universal has found the perfect way to bring back these monsters bigger, better, scarier, more realistic than ever.
Right, and this is great for not just old school fans, because they're gonna blow their minds with this, but even, like I just said, with a next generation of fans. And if this land delivers, which I feel like it will, then the classic Universal monsters have potential to live on another 100 years, because Dark Universe ain't going anywhere.
I know. And honestly, this is probably the smartest way for Universal to bring these monsters back. The theme park division is a massive moneymaker, bringing in nearly $9 billion in 2023 alone, while Universal's film division made just a fraction of that. It's clear where their biggest financial powerhouse is, and if they want these monsters to thrive, then theme parks, baby, are the perfect playground to unleash them both for die-hard fans
and for newcomers.
And for new audiences, yes.
And Universal isn't stopping there either.
Bringing horror to life for Universal is very meaningful, because Universal created the horror genre.
They're continuing to expand on the Universal monsters in Las Vegas as well, with a brand new experience called Universal Horror Unleashed, and one of its main attractions is a Universal Monsters Haunted House. For the first time ever, horror fans will have a permanent place to experience Universal monsters outside of the big screen, outside of theme parks, 365 days a year.
This is a test of courage. This is a place you want to go with your friends to show them that you are strong enough to face your fears and live to tell it all afterwards.
So what does this all mean?
Well, it means that if you learned something new today, then you're going to smash that like button right now.
All right. It also means that Universal's going all in on their classic monsters.
Yes.
And they're not going anywhere.
No, this is just the beginning, baby, because for decades, Universal has struggled to find a way to bring back these monsters in a way that truly resonates with audiences, and I think they've finally cracked the code.
They've got momentum, and they're making the biggest comeback in over a century.
In 100 freaking years. I am stoked. This is just the beginning. Now, if you love all things theme parks, horror, Halloween Horror Nights, Dark Universe, then we have a hype list that you're going to want to check out right here.
Right now.
Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next.